This is the first video on the Enlightenment. The era, known historically as the Enlightenment, marks the intellectual beginning of the modern world. Ideas originating in this era would gradually spread around the world, creating challenges to existing traditions and ways of governing. Many governments today have Enlightenment principles as the basis of their constitutions and forms of government. In addition, the expansion of suffrage to women, blacks, and people of all classes is a legacy of the Enlightenment. Suffrage is the right to vote. Enlightenment ideas on equality also helped end the dominance of social elites such as the aristocracy and the church, and of course, kings and queens. Enlightenment thought also led many countries to establish systems of public schools and put an end to the idea that education was only a privilege for the upper class. The image here is called inspiration. You can see a good idea has entered his head. Enlightenment is all about thinkers and philosophers coming up with better ideas to run society. So, what is the Enlightenment? When historians discuss the Enlightenment, they are usually referring to 18th century Europe, France and England in particular, although other parts of the world, including the United States, are often included as well. The Enlightenment was a period of intellectual ferment that gave rise to a range of new theories about society, government, philosophy, economics, and religion. The period produced more than just abstract theorizing, however. It offered a whole new way of conceptualizing the world and one's place in it. In many ways, this change in perception marked the beginning of the modern era, as institutions and traditions of the past began to shift and even crumble in the face of new ideas and approaches. This painting is called Une soirée chez Madame Griffon, a party in Madame Griffin's house. It's from 1755, and it shows a French salon. It's a very important meeting place to discuss ideas. The term Enlightenment was first coined by Immanuel Kant, a German philosopher. In his name means dare to know in Latin. Kant also wrote in his essay called Sapere ad, all that is required for the Enlightenment is freedom, and particularly the least harmful of all that may be called freedom, namely, the freedom for man to make public use of his reason in all matters. In other words, in order to be enlightened, a person had to think independently rather than simply follow society's customs and traditions. Thus, the Enlightenment encouraged free thought, or at least freer and more wide ranging thought than had occurred in the recent past. The most important factor in the development of the Enlightenment was the scientific revolution that preceded it in the 16th and 17th centuries. New scientific ideas made people challenge their societies and came up with new philosophical ideas. Sir Francis Bacon laid the theoretical groundwork for what became known as the scientific method. In Europe, science had been almost a combination of magic and academics, and scientists were not concerned with careful practices, methodical actions, logic, or theory. Bacon believed that all scientific research should rely on careful observation and experimentation rather than simply relying on one's own thought and reasoning, as earlier scientific thinkers had. The data obtained should then be recorded and analyzed according to logic and reason, then used to produce a testable hypothesis. So the importance of logic and reason, you see, does come from the scientific revolution. Although earlier scientists had already put Bacon's ideas into practice, Sir Isaac Newton is the scientist most associated with the scientific method. Newton, Newton made a range of groundbreaking discoveries in the fields of mathematics, physics, optics, and more. Newton's achievements provided the inspiration for the Enlightenment. If the scientific method had worked so well for finding scientific truth, perhaps it could be applied to social sciences as well, so that the truths about society itself could be discovered. The Enlightenment era was characterized by secularism, non religiousness, challenges to authority, and glorification of reason. Many Enlightenment thinkers felt that although the great minds of the medieval and Renaissance eras had achieved much, they also had been overly constrained by religion, tradition, and superstition. To truly achieve independent thought, one had to throw off all limits and rely solely on reason. Like the pioneers of the scientific revolution, Enlightenment thinkers also strove to make conclusions based on observation, logic, and reason rather than on faith. Enlightenment thinkers revived the spirit of the Renaissance quest for knowledge, choosing to focus on human nature and the workings of society rather than on spiritual matters and religious tenets. This secular approach led to the development of social science. Marquis de Condorcet. The Marquis de Condorcet was a renowned mathematician who played an active role early on in the French Revolution, leading a redesign of the educational system and helping to write the first French Constitution. With the radical Jacobins taking over the revolution, however, he went into hiding. During this time, he wrote his most famous work, Sketch of a Historical Picture of the Progress of Human Spirit. His book provided a clear expression of many Enlightenment ideals, an unbending faith in reason as a means to discover all truths, continual achievements both in science and in social mores and attitudes, and a belief that humans can realistically strive for perfectibility in all areas of life. Condorcet felt that not just elite scientists and intellectuals could make great discoveries, but people of ordinary intelligence as well. He therefore favored universal education, stating that by giving more people the elementary knowledge that can inspire them with a taste for more advanced study and give them a capacity for making progress in it, and that, therefore, the number of men destined to push back the frontiers of the sciences by their discoveries will grow in the same proportion. So, the more people we educate, the more breakthroughs we'll have. Condorcet firmly believed that a devotion to reason could ensure a better future. He stated that eventually the progress of reason will have gone hand in hand with progress in the arts and sciences. Consequently, people would come to realize that their object is the general welfare of the human species. To this end, society would move toward providing a larger intellectual life for everyone, innovations that would ease the burden of labor on the working classes, freedom from want, and greater equality among members of society. Condorcet's optimistic belief in the perfectibility of society was shared by many of the Enlightenment thinkers. There's some discussion questions for today's Google form.